Okay, so good day. Today's daf is Gittin daf lamed. I'm going to share my screen and we will get started. I'm sorry that I can't be with you in person, but I'm glad that we're able to continue our learning together. So earlier today, I guess I should say, because this is going to be recorded for tomorrow. Earlier today, oh, that's not the screen I meant to share. Here we go. Here's the screen. Earlier today, we closed by, not yesterday, but earlier today, we closed by discussing a case where a husband appointed a messenger to deliver a get to his wife, but the messenger didn't recognize the wife, so he didn't know who to deliver it to. So the husband said, okay, listen, you don't have to deliver it directly to my wife. Go to Abba Vermanyumi and he'll deliver it to my wife. So unfortunately, the messenger couldn't find Abba Vermanyumi, and so, but he found a court that could take the get and give it to Abba Vermanyumi. And so then, after the court offered to do so, Rav Safra, who was sitting there, said, "Hey, I'm not sure you're allowed to do that because the husband had specifically told the messenger to deliver the get to Abba Vermanyumi and not to effectuate the get. And so, given the limited nature of the mission, maybe he's not allowed to do anything more than that." And we saw two versions of the Gemara as to whether this was a good question. And the second version said that Rav Safra's question was a good question. And as is often the case, when we have two versions of the story, it seems that the halacha would follow the second, meaning that Rav Safra's question is a good question. And if somebody were to say to the messenger, okay, so don't deliver it to my wife since you don't know her, go deliver it to this particular person, then that's all the person's allowed to do. They're not allowed to set up some other messenger. They don't have the right to effectuate the divorce. And so now we're going to talk about a different situation, a similar situation, where maybe somebody will lack the authority to appoint a further messenger. So we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines up. First words on the line. Hahu Gavra. There was a person, and what did he do? And this is from the bottom of Kaftet Amabet. Hahu Gavra deshader like Gita Devisu. So he was sending a get to his wife. Amr Leila Shliach, and he said to the Shliach, "Listen, lo teisve nehala ad telasin yom. Don't give the get to her until 30 days have passed. Isnis bego." Telasin Yomin. So during that time, some kind of onus happened to the person. So now he's not going to the messenger. So now the messenger is not going to be able to do the delivery. So also, the Rava. It all came in front of Rava, and Rava, in order to analyze what exactly should happen. So Amar Rava, why is it that a sick person's allowed to appoint a messenger? Mishum to honest, because he doesn't have the ability to fulfill the job. So Hainami Anasu, this person's also an honest. Well, Amar Lay, 1 second. So Amar Lay, so as a result, Rava said to the agent, Masar Milach Kamei Didan, give us your message, Dilavasar Telasin Yomin. And then after 30 days, Mishvin and Shliach will appoint a messenger, V'yahev Leinala, and that will give, and then that messenger will give the get to the wife. So Amrulei Rabbanan LaRava. So the rabbis that were there said to Rava, V'hashliach Shalom Nitan LaGerishinhu. Just like the first messenger in connection with the story of Abba Barmanyumi was not actually given the authority to create the divorce. Maybe this messenger, since it's still within 30 days, also wasn't given the authority to give the divorce and also should not be able to give the get into the Beis Din. So Amar Lahu, so Rava said back to them, no, Kevin de Lavasar Plus and Yomin, Matzim Magarish. Since this guy does have the authority once 30 days have passed, well then, he actually is a messenger that has the authority to create the divorce, and so as a result, he has also the authority to make us the messenger that we can then appoint a messenger after 30 days in order to make sure that the divorce happens. Okay, well, 1 second, don't we need to be concerned that maybe during that time that the husband will have wanted to get back together with his wife? Shouldn't that be something that we worried about? So as Rashi says, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10 lines up in the narrow lines of Rashi. Shema Bab Baal Etzla B'Toch Shloshim. Maybe within the 30 days, the husband came to his wife, V'nis Yachidima, and he had was alone with her. Upaisa, and he reconciled with her. Ubal Havi Get Yashan, and now this Uboel, and they had relations. Excuse me, but Havi Get Yashan, and now this get is called a get yashan, an old get, which means that it is not a valid get, because if in fact the husband and wife have relations after the get is written, but before the get is given, that get is no longer valid. And so as a result, maybe we need to be worried about that. So Milo Tanan, after all, don't we see in the following Mishnah, May Achshav, if I say to somebody, or if a husband says that this is your get from now, Im Lobati Mikanva Ad Yud Beis Chodesh, if I don't come back within 12 months, Umeit B'Tok Yud Beis Chodesh, and then the husband dies within 12 months, so by definition, he is not coming back. So Harei Zeh Get, it's a good get. And what do we say? Havinan Ba, we said, and we asked about this when second V'Neko Shema Pies. We asked about that Mishnah, and we said, well, when second, don't we need to be worried that maybe they got back together in the meantime, and so as a result, the get had became a invalid get. Rabba Bar Rav Huna, and Rabba Bar Rav Huna explained, Hachi Amar Abba Mari Mishmei de Rav. This is what my father said in the name of Rav. But Omer, we're talking about where the husband says Ne'emenes alai lomar shalobati, that the wife should be believed if she testifies that the husband did not come by, and so as a result, what's the story? It's only because of that last statement that we're not worried about the husband getting back together with the wife. So really Rava should be worried about the fact that maybe the husband wanted to get back together with the wife, and that maybe they did that. So now Rava felt bad that he had not done the right thing in saying that we could appoint somebody to finish the job of delivering the divorce, the get, after 30 days, as the husband had originally said. But but in the end, it came out that the woman was not, in fact, fully married. They had just done Erusin. They had not done Nisuin. And Rava explained, Im Amru b'Nisua. When do we say that? We say that with respect to a woman who has engaged in full-fledged marriage. But Yomru v'Amrusa, are we going to say it with respect to an Arusa, somebody who's only done Kedushin? Of course not. And so as a result, Rava says that his ruling was correct. And as Rashi says, last Rashi on the place, Im Amru b'Nisua shechaviva alav u'masur l'paisa, right? There's a greater connection between the couple. So if in fact, so that's why we have more of a concern that they'll get back together and have relations. Whereas when it comes to an Arusa who has not been with the husband, so as a result, maybe we would say that in that case, or in fact, Rava is saying in that case, we're not going to be worried about Shema P.A. So maybe that they'll have, she'll be once again connected, that they'll actually have come back together. Okay, so that is, and indeed, and so as a result, Amar Rava says, Ha vadai kam, and that's why we should definitely ask Kimashu based in Shaliach. I'm sorry. So now Rava asks a question with respect to the teaching that he had taught. So again, with respect to he had said that once 30 days pass, the messenger has the authority to effect the get, and so as a result, we're also going to the Beis Din is going to convey the get on to a messenger. So when we appoint that new messenger, we should ask the question: Kimashu Beis Din Shaliach b'fanav o shelo b'fanav. Does it have to be in front of the presence of the original messenger, or can it be separate from that original messenger. Hadar Pashta, and in the end, Rava was able to answer the question himself. Bain Bifanav, Bain Shalo Bifanav. It doesn't make a difference whether it was in front of the guy or not in front of the guy. Okay, and Shalchu Mitam, and then they sent a messenger from there that in fact confirmed Bain Bifanav, Bain Shalo Bifanav. Doesn't make a difference whether the court that is now appointing a messenger to fulfill the delivery of the get that the original messenger is not going to be able to do. So that additional appointment does not have to be in front of that original messenger. Okay, so now where the Gemara is going to discuss two cases where something beyond the husband's control may turn out to trigger a condition to divorce. So Hahuda Amar, there was a certain person who said, Iloa Sina ad plus and yomin lehebi gita. If I don't get back within 30 days, this will be your get. Also faski mavra. So he came back, but there was a block. The crossing blocked him. Right, the river had prevented him, had overflown its banks, and now he wasn't able to cross the river. The bridge was down essentially. And Amr lahu, and he calls out from the other side of the river. Chazu da'asai, chazu da'asai. Look, I've come back. I've come back. So Amr Shmuel lo shmei masya. That's not coming back. You have to be in town. Being across the river isn't going to do it. And so as a result, it was a good get. Similarly, another situation where a Hahuda Amar, a husband said lahu to a witness, Ilo paisna la atlas and yomin. If I don't mollify her, if I don't reconcile with my wife within 30 days, lehevi gita, this should be a get. Azal paisa velo ipaisa. So he tried, but he was unsuccessful. So Amar Rav Yosef, and now we have two different possibilities here. So the first one of Amar Rav Yosef is mi yahev la tarkaba de dinre velo ipaisa. If he would have given her 3 tarkaba is like a combination of trey kaba, 3 kav of a tarkaba of dinar to the wouldn't she have been appeased? Obviously, she certainly would have been willing to come back together. So and yet he did not, and so as a result, he didn't do everything he could have, and so the get would be effective. Ika de Amri, or alternatively, one could say the following: Amar Rav Yosef said that what did Rav Yosef say? Midi de tarkaba de dinarai baila mesavla. Does he have to give her 3 calves of dinners? Of course not. Hi paisa, he tried. Lowy paisa, and she didn't, and she wasn't satisfied with his efforts. And that's not his fault. And so as a result, it's not actually a valid get. So according to this view, Kimanda Amar Yesh Onus Begittin. The second view says basically there is an onus when it comes to get. And if an onus happens and you're stuck, the marriage, the divorce does not actually take effect. And Kimanda Amar Ein Onus Begittin. And the second view says that there is no onus begittin. And when we saw this Gemara, I think this was in Ketubot, when we saw this Gemara then, we saw that in fact, this, when it comes to the river, we said that actually that situation is sufficiently common that we can't call that a full-fledged onus. So the bottom line is that both versions, you can actually say, whether you say Ein Onus Begittin or Yesh Onus Begittin, everybody will agree that in the river case, that's going to be a problem and they're going to actually have to be divorced. But the question of whether or not the person's able to mollify somebody, that's going to be the point of disagreement. And that will be turned on whether or not we say Yesh Onsin Begittin or Ein Onsin Begittin. And it does seem that the halacha, at least as reflected in the Ein Mishpat Ner Mitzvah, seems to be that we say Ein Onus Begittin. Okay, so now that we've been talking about the question of when we presume whether somebody's still alive. So we're going to continue that discussion, but now put it into a different context. And specifically, we're going to talk about somebody who lends money to a Kohen, a Levi, or a poor person, and is going to use the produce that they would have to give either as truma for a Kohen, meiser for a Levi, or meiser ani, meiser rishon for a Levi, or meiser ani for a poor person. We're going to use that to pay the person's going to use that to pay himself back. So let's take a look and see how that works. Hamal v'mos, if a person lends money as a Kohen, as a Levi, as ani, to one of the three, either a Kohen, a Levi, or a poor person, liot mafrish alehen mechelkan, and with the understanding that they're going to separate portions of to which they're entitled, and that portion will come back to them as a repayment. So mafrish alehen becheskat shehin kayamin. You don't have to go and check to see whether the person is still alive when you're separating the truma meiser and meiser ani in order to make sure that you can take it. We don't worry about the death of a Kohen or a Levi. And we don't worry that the poor person may have become wealthy. And we'll take a look at each of those situations in the Gemara. So Mesu, what happens if they did die? Well, you're going to need to get, the lender is going to need to get permission from the inheritors, because after all, on some level, right, they're taking from all the Kohanim, all Leviim, and all poor people in order to repay the debt. So you need to get some level of permission from the inheritors. Im halvan, however, if this loan was made, if Bifnei Beis was in front of a court, well then you don't even need permission from the heirs. You can just continue to engage in the same process to pay yourself back. So again, somebody lent $100 to a Kohen, and after year one, he takes the money that was supposed to go to the Kohen as truma, and he takes it and he keeps it. He separates it, makes it truma, and then he gets to keep it. Obviously, he's going to have to sell it to a Kohen, but he's going to get to keep it as repayment towards the debt. And so that will be how the debt gets repaid, without ever having to have money pass from the borrower back to the lender. So okay, so now that we've got the facts down, let's take a look and see what the Gemara says. So how in the world can this actually work? Because how can the lender retain the truma or the meiser without ever having to give the produce to a Kohen or Levi? So we're going to have three potential answers. So Amarav b'makare kahuna ulavia. We're talking about where the guy really knows well the Kohen and the Levi. They're good friends, and so as a result, and let's take a look in Rashi. B'makare kahuna kamo ish may eight machro, as you see in Shehem Makirav Voavav, that where they are good, they recognize him and they love him. They're good, very good friends. De'ena rogo latate trumot umasros el kohen zeh, and his only custom is to give it to this particular Kohen. Hilkach Kavan Demilsa Depshitahi Diladidhu Yaevlo. That since it's clear that obviously he was going to give the stuff to this particular Kohen, Aske Lahu Shar Kohane Daitaihu. So then everybody else is going to, put away from their mind that they're ever going to get it. And it's as if he actually gave it to these particular people. So approach number one is that we're treating it as if we gave it to them because they're such good friends. Shmuel Amar Shmuel says, no, you don't need to have it so that they're such good friends and that we're treating it as if they actually took ownership. The lender actually found a third party to officially take ownership of it on their behalf, and then the lender took the money back. That's how he fulfilled the obligation. And Ula Amar Ula says, no. Hamani, who is this? Who is the Mishnah according to, that says that you don't actually have to put it in the guy's hand. Rabbi Yossi, it's Rabbi Yossi to Amar Asu es she'ein zocha kizocha, that the rabbis in this situation or in certain situations make this allow certain people who are treated as who we can treat certain people that have not made a kinyan as if they made a kinyan, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. So now, why don't they all agree? So Kula Karablo Amre, the Shmuel and Ula don't agree with Rav because b'makari lo katani, because our Mishnah doesn't explicitly say that we're talking about such good friends. And kishmuel lo ka'amri, and they don't say like Shmuel. So Rav and Ula don't all agree with Shmuel because b'mazaka lo katani, we didn't say anything about making a kinyan through a third party. And Ka'ula Nami Lo Amri, and they don't all like Ula's answer. Rav and Shmuel don't like Ula's answer because Bechida Lo Mokminan. We didn't explain it we don't want to explain our Mishnah according to one singular opinion. We want it to be the general opinion. So, all right, so we've now explained how we can have the lender sort of hold on to the asset without formally giving it to the Kohen Levi or poor person. So now the Brisa is going to expand on what we said in our Mishnah. So we're going to teach a related Brisa. The Brisa is going to first detail the rule in our Mishnah and then give us 5 additional rules. And then we're going to, after quoting the entire Brisa, we'll break it down into those 5 rules. So Tana Rabbanan, Hamal v'Mos les Kohen es Levi es ani lios mafresh alein mechelkan. So again, you made a loan to a Kohen Levi or a poor person in order to separate from them the portion that they're supposed to get from the crops. Again, either truma, meiser, or meiser ani. Mafresh alein b'cheskas shehein kayamin. You can do so. You can continue to separate their portion on the presumption that they're still alive. Uposik iman kishar hazol. Now, rule number one is you can set the price as if it was the cheaper market price, meaning that if you lent the money when the price was $10 per bushel, and so as a result, when you do the truma, if you would need to set 10 bushels in order to get your money back. But now, if the price went down to $8 a bushel, now all of a sudden you're entitled to 12.5 bushels, and that's okay. You can fix the price at the lower market price. The ein bo mishum ribis, and rule number 2 is that is not going to be considered interest. The ein shvius mishamto, and when it comes to shmita, that won't cancel the loan. Meaning, every 7th year, when we generally release loans, this loan is not subject to that release. The imba lachzor ein a choser, and if somebody wants to undo the loan, he's not allowed to do it. We'll see that applies to the lender, not to the borrower. Nisyashu habalim, if the lender gives up hope, for example, gives up hope on his field ever being able to produce the produce, ein mafresh aleihen. Well, then when eventually the field is once again able to produce produce, so then you're not allowed to do any further collection of the debt because you've given up on the debt. And we have a general rule that if you give up on a debt, you're no longer allowed to collect it. Lefisha ein mafrishin al ha'avud. Again, you're not allowed to separate ties, the trumas, meiser, and meiser ani for a loan that has already been given up. Meaning you've given up hope on ever collecting. You've despaired of ever collecting it. Okay, so Amar Mar. So we said rule number 1 of the 5 rules is posek iman b'shar hazol. You can set the cheaper price. Pshita, it's obvious, as Rashi notes, b'chol tanai nami, any kind of condition that you wanted. Imba lifso kishar hazol, if he wants to set it up that like the cheap price, mi yimcha biyado, who's going to complain about it? Gabi shar poskin ala peres, when you have other situations with respect to setting the price for fruit. Nami hachi, we allow this as well. Tanya bezo neshek, we have a Mishnah in Ezo neshek, the parak in I think the 5th parak in Bava Metzia, where it says that you are allowed to collect based on the current lower market price, if that's what you're trying to do. And so isn't that clear that this is permitted? So hakamashmal, and this is what it's telling us. Apa pishalo pasak kamisha pasak tami. Even though the lender never explicitly said that when he separates the truma and the meiser ani, he's going to be collecting the amount that he's owed based on the then prevailing market price, that is assumed to be the case. And so as a result, it does not specifically need to be said. The ain bo mishum ribis, and there's not going to be any interest. Why not? So my timer. So kevan dechiles lay lo yahiv lay, that since and I'll note that, as I note on the screen, in general, ribis, the rabbis prohibited a forward contract, meaning paying for produce now at today's price for delivery in the future, because they were worried that what happens if you pay, again, now the bushel of apples is $10, and now all of a sudden you paid for 10 bushels now, and now 2 months later, it's now $12 a bushel, and the guy owes you 10 bushels. And so now he's paid you effectively $120 worth of apples. So you've essentially lent him $100 and you got paid back $120. So the rabbi says the rabbi said that looks too much like interest. It's not biblically prohibited. It's not ribis ketsutza, but we're going to say that you shouldn't do it. And so, however, there were certain exceptions. There's one exception if the seller has the produce today. In that case, we can treat the seller as if the sale happened right now and the seller is just watching the produce. And number two is if there's an active market in the product. So because again, we can effectively treat condition one as number one as having been met, meaning that it's as if the seller has the produce today. So in any ways, those are the exceptions. So in general, we might not want to allow this. So why do we allow it? Well, kaven the chilesle. In this particular instance, if, as we jump back into the Gemara, if in fact the person did not have the produce, meaning if in fact the lender who's supposed to take the trumas and meisers from his produce and use that in order to pay himself back, if in fact there was no truma and meiser to collect, lo yahiv lay, there would be nothing the Kohen, the borrower, wouldn't have to give him anything. So ki islay nami. So as a result, even if the lender has truma and meiser, ein bo mishum ribis. Basically, it's as if this is a true sale contract, meaning that it's as if the lender has bought the future produce that is going to be going for truma, meiser, or meiser ani. It's as if he's bought it today, on the condition and under the understanding that there is a risk that maybe there will be no produce in his field and he won't get paid back at all. And that kind of contract we do allow for. That's more like an insurance kind of contract. And so as a result, there's upside risk and downside risk for the lender. And so in that situation where we don't have a situation where somebody looks like they're basically setting themselves up to only win and not lose, well then when you don't have that, we have a real contract. And so as a result, we're going to treat that not as a ribis situation. On the other hand, if I set up a situation where I invest in your business and basically say, listen, you guarantee me my money back no matter what. And if the price goes up and if your product is successful, you'll pay me a piece of that business. Well, then I'm essentially in a situation where my investment is really not an investment. It's actually a loan with interest. Because the interest may be dependent on what happens to your business, but it's really a loan with interest. The key is that I have to actually have skin in the game. And so here, where the lender effectively has skin in the game, because if he doesn't actually have any produce, there's no ability to collect from the borrowers themselves. So as a result, we're not going to say that situation involves ribis. Okay. Especially when there's no explicit ribis. Obviously, if there was explicit ribis, that would be a problem. All right, the ain shvius mishamato, that the shvius doesn't cancel the loan. The lo karina be lo yigos, right? Because the Torah, when it says that we are going to cancel the loans, it's saying that you can't try to force the borrower to pay back. But here, there is no forcing of the borrower. There's no ability to collect from the borrower at all. All collection is happening from the Truma, Meiser, and Meiser Ani. And so as a result, that's why Shvius won't undo the loan. V'im ba'lachzar eino chozer. And if he wants to undo it, he's not allowed to. So Amar Papa, lo shanu ela balabayas b'kohen. We're talking about the owner of the house with respect to the Kohen, not the Kohen himself, meaning if the owner wants to undo the arrangement and say that now the Kohen needs to pay back actual cash, he's not allowed to do it. However, aval Kohen b'balabayas im ba'lachzar chozer. But if the Kohen wants to cancel it, let's say he actually wants those apples and he'd rather give the money in order to get the apples because he happens to be going on a business trip and he needs a bushel of apples to take with him. And here he was going to get that bushel of apples and he'd rather have the bushel of apples than the money. So then he has the ability to undo it. And this is consistent because really, again, all of this is showing that this is really a sale transaction where the lender is actually paying the money for the future fruit that he was going to give to the borrower. And so as a result, that's the transaction. Gittin, and we have a Mishnah that says the following: Nasan lo mos, if the buyer gave the seller the money, right? So here the buyer is the lender and the seller is the Kohen Levi or the poor person, and he's taken he's got the money. The low mashach emenu payros, but he did not yet take the produce. Yachol laxarbo, he can undo the deal, and so as a result, we see that and actually either party can undo the deal, and so as a result, the other side, when they haven't yet gotten the fruit and the owner hasn't yet separated it to keep the fruit as his truma meiser and meiser ani, so then he's allowed to the person who the Kohen, the Levi, or the ani is allowed to say, you know what, I'd rather get the fruit and I'll pay you back the money that you lent me. Okay, this Yashua Balim, when we said the fifth of the rules was that if the owner gives up hope, so ein mafrish alehin, then he's no longer allowed to separate meiser on as a payment, lefisha ein mafrishin al ha'ava, because you can't separate meiser for things that are already lost. Again, pshita, this is obvious because we have a concept that if you have a debt and you give up hope on ever collecting the debt, well, then you can't collect the debt. Lo tzricha de akon. No, we're talking about where there was some stalks that grew. And ma'udatema, what might I have thought? Akanta milsahi, that those stalks reflect the fact that there's going to be some produce. So as a result, when the lender gives up hope, really they weren't fully giving up hope, and maybe we shouldn't treat that as a full giving up of hope, as we see in Rashi. Ma'udatema akanta milsahi. I might have thought that those growths, those stalks, should be considered a real thing. When these stalks grew, when it then goes and dries up and seems like nothing's going to grow, usually they'll come back and some growth will happen. It's actually unusual for it to be completely destroyed and to become the field to be completely produceless. And so, therefore, maybe I would say below habi yeush ma'alya. Maybe it shouldn't be a good yeush. And so, as the Gemara says, as Rashi says at the end here, kamash malan. So, as a result, the Brisa is teaching us that even in that case, even when you might have thought that maybe the yeush, the giving up of hope, the despair that the owner of the field would have, that he's never going to have produce from this field this year, that if in fact there's a reason for him not to have given up hope totally, maybe we shouldn't treat that giving up of hope as having a legal significance. And the answer is no. He gives up hope, it has legal significance, and he's not allowed to try and collect later on from Truma and Meiser to pay back this loan because he's given up all hope. Okay, so now we have a similar brisa where our Mishnah noted that if the loan was made in front of Beit Din, then even if the debtor dies, the lender can still collect from what would have gone to Truma, Meiser, or Meiser Ani. And so now the Gemara is going to quote a related brisa. So Tanya, we learned in a brisa, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Hamal b'Moses Kohen Vesalevi beVeis Din. If in fact the loan happened to in Beis Din, Umesu, and now the Kohen or the Levi dies, effectively the creditor is allowed to continue to take the Truma and Meiser that they would have given and to hold on to them against the loan. And similarly, if there was a poor person and it was the loan was made in Beis Din, Umeis, and the poor person died, he's allowed to continue to separate on behalf of the poor Jewish people. And Rav Achi Omer, olam. No, it's not just the poor Jewish people, but it's the poor Jewish people of the world. So my benayu, what in the world is the difference between these two statements? So Ika benayu, here's the difference. Aniye kutim, we're talking about aniye kutim, a certain poor kutim. So Rashi explains, if we take a look at the top Rashi, now we're on Lamed Amud Bet, She'im ein aniye Yisrael be'ir, if there are no Jewish poor people in the city, so be'yesh aniye kutim, but there are poor kutim in the city, mafresh l'tzorcham, you're allowed to take the truma for take the Meiser Ani on their behalf, the Yakvim, and then Latzmo, and then you can keep it for yourself because you are owed the money from the poor person who died, and so this Meiser Ani can still be taken. Sha'avheim zochen behen, because even these kutim have some right to Meiser Ani, and as a result, therefore, you can set it aside technically for them, but really because of this idea that you can charge a loan against these funds, so you'd be allowed to take the loan, take this as a payment for the loan, because the kutim gari emet, because these kutim are in fact considered full-fledged converts according to Rabbi Achi, and so that's why we'll allow that to continue. However, Tanakama, when it comes to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who's the first opinion, he says Garei Arayotem. No, they are Gerim that converted because of fear of lions. V'lo Yafresh Bishvilam, and you're not allowed to take on behalf of them. Ella Bishvil Aniya Yisrael Yafresh B'Kol Makom Shehem. Rather, you would need to have in mind that you're taking this Meiser Ani for other Jewish people who happen to be somewhere else. Now, Tosfos says, one second, at the end of the day, you've effectively not done, there's no difference between, no practical real difference between Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and Rabbi Achi, because in both cases, no matter what the situation is, the person gets paid back. So what kind of Ika Benayu is that? So rather, the Re says that actually Rashi is wrong, and on that last comment, that it's not in fact that you could take you can separate Meiser Ani on behalf of Jewish poor people that are elsewhere. You have to take Meiser Ani only on the part of Jewish poor people that are in your city. And so as a result, if there are no Jewish poor people in your neighborhood, then you would not be allowed to use that separation in order to pay off that loan. Instead, you would effectively have to waive the loan. Okay, so that would be, at least that's what it seems like one would say from this Tosfos. So, okay, and this is the top Tosfos on Lamed Amud Bet. So what about now Ashir Ha'ani? What happens if the Ani became wealthy? So then, Ein Mafresh Alav, the lender's not going to be able to collect any longer. V'zacha hala b'meshi b'yado, and the borrower, who now is rich, he gets to keep all the money. So he's no longer liable for the debt, and the borrower and the lender can't use Meiser Ani to pay off that debt, because the Meiser Ani that he wanted to use to pay off that debt is no longer relevant. So when second, the Rabbanan, Maishna Lamisa de Avatakanta, Umaishna La Ashirus de Lo Avatakanta. Well, 1 second. We see that if the poor person dies, we've given the lender a method of getting his money back, because he can still, as long as he made the loan in court, or he gets permission from the heirs, he's able to continue to collect that loan from Meiser Ani that he takes going forward. But when it comes to the Ani becoming rich, the lender becomes essentially up a creek without a paddle. He doesn't get to collect any more of the loan, and the borrower doesn't even have to pay him back. So why are we treating these two cases differently? So the Gemara explains, Misa Shchika. No, death is something that happens regularly, and so we needed to take care of that and be concerned about it. But Ashiris lo Shchika. But the idea that somebody who's poor, sufficiently poor that they're an ani for the purposes of Meiser Ani, so that person for that person to become wealthy, that's very unlikely. Amar Rav Papa, and Rav Papa said, Hainu de Amri Inshi. We have a saying along those lines. Chavrech mis asher, that if you hear that your friend died, all right, so believe it. But if you hear is asher lo tasher, but if you hear that the person became wealthy, don't believe it. And of course, this asher to asher is a play on words, that because we have this idea of aser to aser, that you should take meiser, and that way you'll be able to do more meiser and become wealthy, or aser to asher, meaning that you'll take some meiser so that you can become wealthy. In any event, this is another play on that kind of words, that you have these two words that sound alike that connect, so it becomes a very nice saying that asher lo to asher. Okay, so now the last piece of our Mishnah said that if the debtor died, if the debtor died, you're going to need permission unless you made the loan in court. So Tanya, we have a brisa. Rebbe Omer, Yorshim Shiyarshu. When we say that you need to get permission, you need to get permission from heirs that inherited. 1 second, are there such thing as inheritors that don't inherit? No, that doesn't make sense. So Rabbi Yochanan's going to explain it for us. Ela Amar Rabbi Yochan Sheyarshu Karka. What he's saying is that when we get permission, the permission needs to come from those who inherited real estate. And Rashi helps us here. If we take a look 3, 6, 8 lines down in the narrow lines of Rashi on Lamed Bet, mutal hamitzvah lifroa chovas habayin, because it's on them that they have the mitzvah of paying back the debts of their father. And so as a result, because they have the mitzvah, only if they inherit land, that's why we're going to have them give permission for the lender to be able to continue to collect the payments from the Meiser, the Truma, the Meiser, or the Meiser Ani. Below Shiyarshu Ksafim, but not from somebody who only inherits money. And Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rabbi Yonasan, Heiniach Melo Mechat, if in fact the dead person, the person who dies, leaves over just a needle-sized piece of property, so then Gova Melo Machat, then the lender is only going to be allowed to collect the Truma and Meiser Ani that is equal to the value of that needle-sized property and not anything more. Melo Kardom, but if he does an axe-sized property, well then Gova Melo Kardom. He's allowed to collect that amount, meaning basically whatever the property size is, that's what's going to determine how much could be collected. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan disagrees. Even if he's got just a little piece, a needle-sized piece of property, Gova Melo Kardom, he's going to be able to collect an axe size. And Rashi points out, no, that it doesn't literally mean an axe size. It means kolomer kol chovo, right? This is the Rashi 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 lines down. He's allowed to collect the entire debt. Because he can take it away. And and then it can go back to him, and he can go back and take it away again. Kol shah shiavdu mimenu. Every time they they redeem it from him until the creditor gets paid in full. And this is just like as we continue. Uchemasa de Katina de Abaye. And Rashi adds a few words. Kiyahu Maisa de Katina de Abaye. And what is that case? What is this case of a small field that Abaye that Abaye had the following rule. He ruled the following. Well, we'll see exactly what he ruled. In Ketuvot, Dav Tzadik Aleph Amabet, Dahu Dahavu Maski Bey Meya Zuzi. There was a person who owed 100 zuz, Ushchiv, and he died. V'shavik Katina Shavi Chamishim, and he inherited. He gave over to his heirs property that was worth 50. Asa Baal Chov, so the lender went and took it away. Tarfua, and he took it away. Also, Yatme Yave Le Chamishin, and so the orphans gave the guy 50 in order to take it back. The Salkuo and the Hadar Asa Tarfa, and then after that happened, the lender, went back to the orphans and took the property again a second time, and Abaye said that was totally okay because you can collect up to the amount that you're owed, as long as the inheritors, as long as the heirs take real property. Okay, so Tana Rabbanan, and of course, if the heirs don't take real property, well, then there is no absolute obligation to repay the debt of the parents, but it would be a mitzvah to do so nonetheless. Okay, so Tana Rabbanan. So now we have our Mishnah noted that hold on. Okay, so the Gemara next addresses when we need to be worried about Trumas Meiser being mixed in with Meiser or not. So let's take a look. So Tana Rabbanan, Yisrael Sha'amar Lalevi, Meiser Yesh L'cha Biyadi. You have some Meiser that is in my possession. So you are a Levi, you get the Meiser. I happen to hold some that belongs to you. We're not worried that some of that Meiser is in fact already Trumas Meiser, that we would need to be careful to make sure that it's all that it goes only to a Kohen. But if I were to say Kor Master Yesh L'cha Biyadi, that I have a core of Meiser Rishon that is in my possession, that belongs to you, well then Choshishin L'Trumas Meiser Shabo. Then we do have to be worried about it. Well, my Kamar, what are we trying to say here? So we're going to give 3 efforts. We're going to do 2 right now, and and those will both be rejected, and we'll leave the third one, God willing, for tomorrow's daf, which hopefully I will record later this evening. So Amar Abaye Hachikamer. This is what we're saying. Yisrael Sha'amar L'Levi Ma'aser Yesh L'cha Biyadi V'Helech Damav. The Yisrael is telling the Levi that I have some Meiser that belongs to you, but I want to redeem it. So I'm going to give you the money that it's worth, and now I will have redeemed it. Ein Choshishin Shema Aso Trumas Meiser Al Makom Acher. We don't have to worry that the Levi made some of the truma that I'm holding into Trumas Meiser, which I would not be allowed to eat. But Kor Meiser, Yesh L'cha Biyadi V'Helech Damav. But if I were to say I have a core of Meiser that belongs to you, but it's in my possession, meaning it's in my field, or it's in my granary, or in my storehouse, but I want to buy it from you, so here's the money that it's worth. I do need to worry that you, the Levi, have turned some of the amount that I told you, some of that core, into Trumas Meiser, using, based on Truma that exists somewhere else. Now, based on Meiser that exists somewhere else. 1 second. Are you suggesting that we're talking about a wicked person? Here, I'm paying the Levi to be able to retain the Meiser that is supposed to go to him. The Shakli Demei Umashvule Truma Meiser, that he's going to take money from me, and then he's going to make some of what I'm keeping Trumas Meiser that I'm not going to be able to eat. Of course he's not going to do that. And so that can't be it. Ella, so now we gave the second explanation. Ella Amar Rav Masharshia, Brei de Ravidi, Haki Kamar, Yisrael Shamar Leven Levi. So we have a Jew again telling to a Levi, Meiser la'avicha biyadi helach damav. I have certain meiser that belong to your dad, who obviously is also a Levi. And here is its money. Here is the money that you're owed. And so let me, and I want to be able to keep it. Well, if I don't give you an amount, so then ein choshesh and shema aso aviv trumas meiser al makom acher. I'm not going to worry about that. There's any trumas meiser there. But kor maser la'avicha biyadi v'helech damav. But if I tell you a certain amount that there's a kor that I have of your father's, then choshesh and shema aso aviv trumas meiser al makom acher. Then I do need to worry that maybe your father made some of that core of trumas of meiser into trumas meiser. 1 second. Again, we have a general rule that you're not supposed to take truma and specifically or trumas meiser out of produce that is not near the produce that you're taking it for. So if I have produce over here in room number 1, and I have another house across the town, and with other produce, I'm not allowed to say that this produce should be meiser for that, or that produce should be meiser for this, or truma for this, or truma for that. I need to group them all together, and then I can take the truma and the meiser. And so as a result, here, when I have this core of meiser that belonged to your father, he's not supposed to turn it into trumas meiser. So as a result, that shouldn't be okay. As Rashi says, mukaf means samuch commotion ein makifin. We have the shtei chavios. We have in Beitza that you shouldn't bring together 2 barrels. So and put a pot on top of it in order to cook because we're worried that something will fall and that you're going to make something on Yantif. Even though cooking is fine on Yantif, but we're worried about the structure of this particular item. But the point is that mekifin means to bring together. And what do we say? Asur l'chaver. There's somebody who takes truma is not allowed lomar tvua sheyesh li b'makom ploni, that the grain that I have in this place tehei truma alzu, that it should become truma for the grain that I have here, because shema ota shah ain't a be'in. Maybe at that moment the grain that I had over there is no longer. Maybe it got eaten. Maybe it got burned. However, if it happens, it happens, meaning it's still a valid action that you can take theoretically, but we don't want it to happen. And so how could we be saying that in this particular case, when the person says that your father gave me a core, that I'm holding a core of meiser that belongs to your father, how could it be that the father of the Levi would have somehow made that part of that core into trumas meiser? He would never do that. That would not be an appropriate thing. So we still need to figure out this explanation for our brisa. So how can we understand the brisa? Well, for that, you're going to need to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. And again, tomorrow's daf should, God willing, be in the a link for it should be in the email, the daily email from HIR. Have a fabulous, fabulous day.